What is up, everybody? It's Dr. Vibe here, host and producer of the award-winning Dr. Vibe show, the home of Epic Conversations. I'm the host of Epic Conversations, 2018 award winner in the innovation category given out by the Canadian Ethnic Media Association. And one of the many things I do is I also host monthly online conversations for fathers that are co-sponsored by Dad Central, Canada's national fatherhood organization, and Dove Men Care. And speaking about fathers, the new friend that we have on the Dr. Vibe show tonight is very passionate about fatherhood. But let me tell you a little bit about him. Patrick J. Patterson is president of Global Partners for Fathers and Families Consulting, a firm that specializes in growing the capacity and funding for agencies focused on empowering fathers, men, and boys. As a fund development expert, let me say that again, a fund development expert. That alone should get your attention because I know a lot of people are looking for money. Patrick has written and led grant writing efforts that have successfully resulted in more than, listen to this, folks, $55 million in grant awards from federal, state, and private foundation funding sources, including the multi-million-dollar federal grant awards during both President George W. Bush and President Barack Obama administrations. As an expert working with men, fathers, and boys, he has been featured father keynote, workshop leader, or trainer in more than 43 states in America, the U.S. Virgin Islands, and 5 different countries. He currently serves as a fatherhood consultant to Wake County Human Services, Vance County DSS, Ohio Department of Youth Services, and the NFL Players Association, and works closely with the NBA Chicago Bulls. Maybe I'll have to ask him about that documentary. He earned a Bachelor of Social Work degree from Benedict College in Columbia, South Carolina, and dual master's degrees in Social Work and Public Health from the University of South Carolina. Welcome to the second Black man that is on one of my new journeys, Black Men Talking, a digital journey about the lives of Black men, Mr. Patrick J. Patterson. How are we this evening, young man?
Very well. What's up? What's up? What's up? What's up?
Everything's up, man. Everything is
What's up?
You know what? I've known about you for a bit, and then I saw you on a Fatherhood Gov broadcast. Okay, let me just track him down. And finally, the boss's approval, you're here.
Yes. I'm glad to be
here. A pleasure. How's your day been?
All is well, Dr. Vibe. All is well, man. This is a safe space. This is a place I love being in. So I'm excited. Cannot wait to get into it, but also to learn. So I'm looking forward to it. Thanks for having me.
No, the pleasure's mine. And as I said before we went live, I'm not a one and done person. So the mic is always open to come back on.
Love it. I'll take it.
So great bio about all the things you've just done in the last little bit, but let's cycle back. What was the young Patrick about? Where did he grow up? What was the young days of Patrick all about?
I am obviously 45. I'm the third of, was born in South Carolina, in Columbia, South Carolina. In the projects, I'm not sure if people recognize, but it's public housing is where I grew up.
We have it here in Canada too, my man.
Oh, okay. I'm doing glossy of terms right now. But spent a lot of time as a kid growing up in, I would call it impoverished now, but as a kid, I thought we had everything. My neighbors knew each other. My friends were my teammates. Spent my summers outside. Video games were not the thing, learn how to shoot a basketball, throw a football. Very, very much into sports. In my neighborhood, as a kid, Saturdays and into the summer were spent playing sports, playing ball. And so that was me. As a student, was in the beginning years pretty good. And then around that 14, 15, when cool became cool, my affinity for schoolwork kind of went away. So, but I was very much into sports. It's kind of who most folks would recognize me as a kid back in the day.
Excellent. What did your parents think about you being so heavily engrossed in sports?
It was encouraged. My father, as a young man, spent time in and out of prison. So he was a guy who, for the most part, was raising young men. He had brothers, my uncles, that literally, when they came by the house, they didn't say, "How you doing in school?" They said, are you starting? Are you on the team? You know, so that was the emphasis. In my neighborhood, for the most part, the older gentlemen, we all went to one high school. The older gentlemen in the neighborhood were asking you, they didn't say, you know, did you pass your math test? It's, are you starting or are you on the team? And so that was the emphasis. So they thought it was good because it was I won't say a status thing, but it was something that people really appreciated and respected in my neighborhood.
And you can be as open as you want to be, but
Yeah. I'm good.
that situation of having your father in and out in prison, how did you handle that? And how did your mother handle that? And how did your family handle that?
Well, I would, you know, the long and short story of kind of my father being incarcerated. So I'm the third of four. I was born in 1974. Prior to me being born, I have two older siblings. My father was in and out of prison during that time. When I was born, I can't explain it, Dr. Vibe, but when I was born, my father, for whatever reason, he stopped all of that. No NA, no AA. I'm not the first. I'm not the only. I'm the third of four. He stopped when I was born. And so for 15 years, I saw a guy who had an eighth grade education work three jobs. I've got pictures of him in his uniform sleep. He took cat naps. You know what cat naps are, you know? How long is a cat nap, Dr. Bob?
It depends how old you are.
Yeah. Exactly. But he would take cat naps. He worked and worked and worked. Was very, very big on, I think from some of the structure of being incarcerated, was very big on his boys doing certain things the right way. And so we had to make our beds. Going to church on Sundays, my dad made us get our stuff ready on Wednesdays. And he did an inspection of what you're going to wear to church on Sunday by Wednesdays.
Wow.
Even being late. And so there were some things that he was ingraining in us. My favorite experience as a kid that I really cherish now is at 12, I wanted a pair of Air Jordans. And I wanted them so bad, not realizing what it costs a parent to buy those shoes. But I'll never forget, my dad told me and my brothers, I got something for y'all on Saturday. And so we're thinking we're getting shoes. We got up early that Saturday morning, Dr. Vibe. He went someplace in the neighborhood. He found a lawnmower. And we came downstairs ready to put these new shoes on. He said, if you want those shoes, you're going to need to cut yards the rest of the summer. You meet me halfway, I'll meet you guys halfway. So that's the dad that I had. At about the age of 15, my sophomore year of high school, my dad had worked three jobs. He got a job at a factory. And in the middle of a year of really working hard, doing his best, he was recognized for his hard work. And the next thing I know, he was being awarded a plaque at his job for his work. At the end of this kind of segment of my life, after 15 years of no drinking, my dad smoked cigarettes, but being there every day, he went to the job to receive this plaque. He picked the plaque up. And when he left the job, he's like me today, Dr. Bob. I have friends who are doing different things than me, but we still stay in touch. But he went to the old neighborhood to really just show the guys, not look at me, but I can't believe that I've achieved something like this. And so after 15 years of sobriety, one of his very good friends said to him, you know, we really, really, really need to just celebrate, your accomplishment. And fast forward, one of the guys offered him a beer. He said no, just because of the way guys are. The friend said, come on, just one beer. He said no the second time. And then the third time, just because of the way guys work, he decided to drink the beer. It went from the beer to cocktails, or from cocktails to marijuana, and from marijuana to needles. And so at 15, when I saw my dad go off that night to get his plaque, he stopped by the old neighborhood. The next 3 days, my dad didn't come home. He relapsed. And so at 15 is kind of where the academically focused kid average grades, everything shifted for me. So that was kind of where it led me to where I am today. I'll leave it at that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? I'd like to say thank you for sharing that.
Absolutely.
And I know some people are saying, we're saying on my old mic, the volume was low. There's a little bit of echo on this, but I think this will be a little bit louder for the audience. So I'm going to behave myself with my volumes. But thank you for sharing that story. How has that period of your life impacted the father you are today?
I think it's a couple things. And my work the last 20 plus years has been with fathers. And so there was a period of my life where I was angry. You know, my junior and senior year of high school, I finished high school with a 1.3 GPA. Pretty much just going to school and playing ball is what I did. As a father today, what it said to me at that time, and I told at the time, my girlfriend, if we ever had kids, that I was never going to leave, because I knew the feeling of coming home and your dad not being there. I knew the feeling of him being there, and also knew the pain of him not being there. And I knew what it felt like when, you know, after a couple of weeks living someplace, my mother had to come in and tell us, hey, gather your things. We're going someplace else. As a kid, you know, I know that feeling. So as a father today, my wife, and I can just knock on wood, I've never spent a day in my marriage, and it'll be 23 years on Saturday, not working. I've always made a way. You know, I've always said to myself, I'm going to do whatever it takes. But it also taught me that my father, and I know this now as a 45-year, my father had his own story. And most people, and they think about what happened to me at 15, they would throw that man away. The years that I've spent as a father now, what I recognize is that my father had his own story. And for some, his story didn't matter. But for me, what it did for me was really help me to think about not what I lost, but what he gave me those first 15 years, if that makes any sense.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What did your mother instill in you?
Church was first. If the doors were open, we were there. She taught me service. My mother was a domestic. And throughout those 15 years my dad was working, my mother worked on the other side of town in the big houses for white families. And so for me as a kid, it was somewhat interesting to watch. You know, in school, they have you fill out your forms at the beginning of the year, and you put down your parents' job. I was always instructed, just leave it blank for your mom. But I watched her work overtime. When my parents separated, I'll never forget, I wanted a pair of green, something about sneakers and boys, but I wanted a pair of green gym shoes. And I'll never forget thinking about, don't even ask her. At this time, she's single parent, big family, but single parent. Don't even ask her for these shoes. But I did mention them to her. And lo and behold, she was working that same shift for these families on the other side of town. She ended up doing double, you know, catering parties, serving on the weekend at these families' homes. And I'll never forget, this is special to me, Dr. Bob, but my junior year, we had our first game. And my mother told me that morning, she said, you know, I wanted to get you the shoes. I can't, but you got sneakers. Just play in those shoes. And at this time, I'm like, I ain't troubling nobody. I'll never forget, we're in the locker room getting ready for the game, and my coach comes in and he says, Pat, I need to see you. And I'm thinking, must be them grades, you know, caught up to me. So I walk in, I follow him to the office, and in the office is my mother. So I'm like, what is this about? And she passes me a box of those green sneakers. And I didn't know why she was gone on the weekends for those few weeks. I didn't know why she was coming in late, leaving out really early, but she taught me sacrifice. She taught me how to be selfless. And as a father, and even as a professional, My greatest blessings have come from helping other people. And so she's embodied that pretty much all my life. My mother's a great cook. It's not just my opinion. It's what a lot of my friends have said. She fed us. The little bit of money that we had, hot dogs for my friends, Kool-Aid. She was the kind of person that nurtured people. And so she's one of my greatest inspirations when it comes to the work that I do today. Without question.
In retrospect,
yeah,
would there be anything you would want to change about your childhood?
Not a thing. Not a thing. I think the greatest compliment that I get from people is in all the things I've done. I've been to 45 states, 7 countries. I work with 2 presidents, NFL, NBA. People form an opinion about you pretty quickly when they read about you or see you. And one of my greatest compliments is that you're cool. I thought you would be, but it's taught me humility.
Yeah.
And so my kids, it is one of my greatest gifts because they also have a heart for service. And if I think about if I was grown in a different top part of town or given a silver spoon, probably would have been okay because I had really good family around me. But I don't think I would have had the same foundation that I have. So it's not uncommon for my wife to say to me, Patrick, we got to go. When I go to a store and I see a guy outside homeless, it's not uncommon for me to say, hey, man, when was your first night on the street? Tell me when you, and it's to me, I know the story is the connector for all of the stuff that we do. But for most guys who are homeless or panhandling, they're really shocked that somebody stopped to ask.
Very true.
What's your story?
Yeah.
So that to me, I wouldn't change because it's who I am. It's who I am.
Just want to shout out Kevin Messon from New York City. What up, Kevin? And also have Dr. Tachi, who is on from who hosts the livest program in regards to media tech and pop culture. It's called Mediascope, and it's on every Wednesday from 5 p.m. Eastern time on Instagram Live, and then from 6 p.m. it's on Facebook Live, WJMS Radio, Periscope, and LinkedIn Live. So Dr. Tachi, thank you for being here and all the stuff that you do. Patrick, just what we've covered already could be a book. And so tell us what you were doing before you started down the road of, someone named Sharani Patterson is here. I wonder who that is. So tell us what you were doing before you started down the journey of helping fathers, men, and boys.
Playing ball. I mean, it started for me pretty early. I was in high school when my parents separated. My mother pushed us into the church, and so service was it. Fortunately for me, and I was going to touch on Sharani for a second. She is my game changer. But when I got the news that my parents were separating, the way that God works in my life is he doesn't let me fall. So when they separated, I met an older female in high school as a dare from one of my friends to take her to the prom. And you know how guys are. I was good with the dare. And so I asked her to the prom. She told me emphatically no. But for me, it was a challenge. And so the next couple months, I spent courting this young lady. And like I said, Saturday will be 23 years we've been married. So service has always been there for me. When I was in high school, lots of things in the community when I played football. When I got to college, barely made it in. But Sharani at 17, when I was 16, after telling me no, and she said to me, I think you're cute, but I think you're smarter than you'd lead on to be. And she challenged me. She said, if you want to date me, you got to go to college.
Wow.
And no one had ever said that. In my neighborhood, if you played sports or you sold drugs, girls didn't talk to you like that. They just said yes to whatever you asked her for. She was the first person that said to me, I think you can do more than play ball. And so, Next thing I know, I was carrying books. Next thing you know, I was applying I thought you just go to college. I didn't know you had to apply and be accepted. But when I got to college, it's just weird to say this, but every assignment that they gave us as freshmen, they would say, this is a free space to write whatever you want to write about. I wrote about my father. It was never like my favorite team. It was never, my favorite dish. It was about my father. This is before the fatherhood field was what it is now. So service, when I got to junior, senior year, if there was a major paper we had to write and they gave you the freedom to pick the topic, it was something tied to fatherhood. And it was because that space was still a hole for me with my dad. And so that's all I've ever done. My first job out of college, I didn't work at like a restaurant or, some gymnasium. It was with families. It's been social work since I can remember. So my first job was at a foundation in South Carolina, and they were starting a $10 million project. And I wrote a senior paper when I was an undergrad in 1997. It was entitled The Difference Between Successful and Non-Successful At-Risk Youth. And the findings were, there's a man that has had some impact on the kid. And that was my father. In the middle of, I'll say this last piece, in the middle of my junior, senior year of high school, if there was a disordinance in the audience at the game, it was my father. He was carried out. When I went to college in my same neighborhood where I grew up, I went to college a mile from where I grew up. My father found me in the dorms. He would tell my friends, if you see Pat, tell him his daddy looking for him. And there was a point when I got to be an intern and I had a professional gig, my dad, they would say, there's somebody in the lobby wanting you, Patrick. Come downstairs. It'd be my father. And what I found out from my mom, she said, while you think your dad doesn't want to be around you, he's trying to stay connected to you.
That's powerful.
If that makes any sense. Yeah.
Just diverting from the fatherhood path for a moment.
Yeah.
When did you know that Sharani was the one?
I think it was high school. I think it was when she set the goal for me to be close to her. I need to be better. There were moments in my childhood, particularly junior, senior year, I didn't think I could. And she had no investment in me. There was no marriage in sight. There was no wedding in sight. But she was the one that would say to me things like, you got this. When I applied to colleges with a 1.3, when I figured out you had to have good grades, she was the one that helped me to get into college. When I got to college, and I thought she was the one, no dating, just really friends that encouraged me. And so whenever I felt like it was challenging, she was the one that made it okay for me to say that with no judgment, but would encourage me. And my mom liked her.
That helps.
That was really important. So I knew then when I got through undergrad, I finished in May of 97, we got married in June, but she's always been a steady kind of wind beneath my wings type. So I knew then at 16, this is what it is. Yeah.
Nice. Thank you for sharing that. That's fantastic. And Dr. Tachi saying this is amazing. So she's really enjoying your sharing with us this evening. When did you know that fatherhood would be your journey, your passion? I don't want to say a career, but your passion.
I've been doing this for a long time. I've never felt tired doing this. It's a gift that my father gave me, which is somewhat ironic because there was pain in my childhood that I thought was caused by him. When I figured out he had a story, it connected us in a different way. And I've never wanted to do anything else. My wife will tell you in public spaces, I don't want to say men are drawn to me, but the weirdest conversations come up and we connect in a way. That's God. I've accepted I have an anointing to do this work. I struggled with that for a while because I never wanted to feel special or different. But he's blessed me with my path to serve men. I've been with Bishop T.D. Jakes. I've been with presidents. I've been international. For a kid who finished with a 1.3 GPA to have been regarded by the highest office in the land as an expert, that's all God. So accepting that was the first thing, but now really just kind of really jumping on it and leveraging it has been, clear to me. So I don't struggle with it anymore. It's gone to a place now where I think boys is like the next thing for me. I can walk into a school and see Patrick pretty quickly. I know the kid that doesn't want to appear smart. I can tell. And so just owning that and then inviting brothers in. I have a lot of young guys that call me and ask, I want to do what you're doing. But they don't know the journey that it's taken me to get here. So
what were the early years of that journey like?
Honestly, I didn't make goals in the beginning because I didn't want to have disappointments. So when I got invited to a conference to speak, there were points where I wouldn't share my story for fear of embarrassment. I also didn't want to embarrass my father and my mom. So I would try to protect them. So I would tell pieces of it. And then I was challenged by a pastor in Charleston, South Carolina. And I was doing a speech and he said to me, "You're still hurting." And I said, "No, I'm actually good." I said, I'm over that. And he challenged me to be transparent. And I don't know if you know this feeling, Dr. Vibe, but the minute I kind of told my entire story, I found wings.
Yeah.
I felt light.
Yeah.
I felt light.
Yeah.
So first 5 or so years, I protected everything I said. I spoke professionally. I used data. And then about that 5-year mark, when I was challenged by this pastor, I was freed. And what I found out in these last 20 plus years is that that's the gateway to helping people, is to be transparent, to make sure that they understand they are not the first or the only. And it's been empowering for me in a way that I cannot explain, but it's been a place that I've been able to connect. My father has said many things over the years that I didn't understand then, but I get now. One thing he would say to me and my brothers is, "You cannot correct me unless you're connected to me." And as a speaker or as a trainer or as a brother, he would always give this example that if I went into a restaurant and they said to me, "Patrick," or "Boy, take that hat off," that you'd probably look at them kind of sideways. But if you went to your granny's house and she used the exact same words, "Boy, take that hat off," you're going to probably take the hat off just because there's a connection there. But transparency has been the breakthrough for me. But I've worked hard.
Yes.
Late nights, early mornings, long days, but I do it with my family first. I believe in serving them first. And whatever's left, I can do this or I can do other things.
Nice. Fantastic.
Yeah.
You've had an incredible journey when it comes to helping fathers and men and boys. And now I'm going to get right to it. What do you feel the state of fatherhood is right now? Because this is a very unique time in our history.
Yeah.
This is a generational time that I don't think we'll ever experience again, because we're in a moment where a situation is going on, especially with COVID, that's affecting every person in the world directly or indirectly.
Yeah.
How is it affecting our fathers from where you're at?
I would say this: there are a lot of guys doing it right that never get the light. People don't talk about those guys. There are a lot of Black men specifically that are engaged and doing what they're supposed to be doing. So I think that is an unknown And whenever I have a chance to share it, I always talk about that. On the flip side, there are a lot of lonely men who are married, they're in families, they're in good jobs, they're very lonely. And in today's society, what you might see with either protesting or even some of the violence beyond the recent events that you see locally, it is the way that most men communicate their hurts is a lot of them act them out. And so that's what you're seeing right now. For me, as I think about George Floyd, bless his soul, I think about some of the uprisings around police brutality. We're in a special time. And I think there are three things for me that I've used kind of as my rules of engagement. One is just really extending grace. Before we came on the air, I made a point that I have just enough energy to give to everybody else. I've got to focus. And that's come over time. But grace is really important. You got to extend grace to people that don't know. That's really, really, really important. When you think about white people, Native Americans, Latinos, I use grace first. I'm going to give you the benefit of grace. The second thing that I try to do is use discernment. There are people who today, tomorrow, in 10 years, that are going to poke the bear. And you got to know really quickly if you're walking into a ring or you walk into a peace circle. So discernment is really important. And then today, what I think is somewhat damaging to a fault is just the ability to post your immediate emotions. I think on social media, through text messaging, the digital platforms, you're seeing what people feel, but they very often don't have a chance to think about what they're saying. And you see those three things at play. But we're in a dangerous time when it comes to how quickly you could share your emotions without thinking about them. I've seen people hurt or become hurt by what they've said immediately. But I have hope. I'm a father who is a hopeful. I give that to my mom and my dad because they believed. They didn't think they'd see a Black president, and they did. And so my hope is that my kids will experience things a little bit different than I did as a kid. But focus.
Dr. Tachi has a question here. She's saying, I see that you're a member of Kappa Alpha Psi.
Yes, every day.
And she says, how has being part of the organization helped you with your healing?
I would say a couple ways. One is I never thought about fraternities as a kid. There was nobody in my family was in a fraternity. But in terms of brotherhood, I found guys older than me that can serve in that mentor role. And when I talk about folks who've helped me get to where I am today, that's been incredible. And then what I find too is very unique is I meet younger brothers in the fraternity that I see myself. And I don't volunteer information, but there are moments where guys just want to be connected. But it's been tremendous for me. When I travel, my wife would tell you, I'm never alone. I've leveraged that fraternity, our fraternity, as a family. So it's been tremendous for me.
I want to get back and I want to delve deeper because I don't know if you know or not, I work with fathers here north of the border. And a lot of people may not realize that there are many men, fathers that are very lonely. And I want to get your evaluated experience on why you made that statement.
Last year, I'll give you a real example. Last year in June, I was driving from North Carolina to South Carolina for 3 hours. And a friend of mine, he's a fraternity brother of mine, actually called me, hadn't talked to him in 6 months. And he asked, I would just call and check on you. I said, oh, sure. I said, I'm good. I said, how are you? He's military, decorated military. And he, as I'm driving, I got a 3-hour drive. He said, I've had better days. He's high ranking military. And so his mother, who's elderly, lives with him and his wife. And his daughter fell at school. She had a traumatic brain injury. And so he's in the middle of both ends of the spectrum. And so as I'm driving, I'm just driving and listening and just by myself. And you can hear emotion as he's trying to tell me what's going on. And I paused. I said, listen, we're good. I'm in the car by myself. So if you need to cry, cry. And for 2 hours, Dr. Bob, when I say wailed, it was from his guts that he wailed. So here's what I did after I got home, because we both cried. I asked my younger brother, who's a father as well, I said, do you think brothers need to cry and vent? You know, my brother said, absolutely. And we've had this conversation before. So the next day, I went to Facebook and I started this group. I live in North Carolina, I'm from South Carolina, called Carolina Fathers. And I just posted, this is a group for men to share. In a year's time, we're nearing 4,000 men who are in this group. It's a Facebook group.
Wow.
Nearing 4,000 men, all races, all ages.
Yeah.
And I've made it a safe space for folks to share. And so we've had guys talk about being molested in this group. We don't know each other. We've had guys talk about being divorced, their pain, their hurts. And it just confirmed for me what you know, is that unless somebody shows these brothers that they care, they take that situation and they isolate. You know, when you've got a guy who's in trouble, you text him, he's not quick to text you back. Something's going on. So I'm clear about that. I'm clear about that. I have no questions about that. And I've been there myself. In my younger years, Thanksgiving, my wife will tell you, when I got married, I always found a basketball game to go to. At Thanksgiving, my family would gather and I would say, I would come, but I've got these tickets. But I was lonely. I have a big family, but I was lonely. Father's Day, I would find somewhere else to be besides in the company of friends and family because I was lonely. And that's not uncommon for a lot of guys. When they get in these spaces, as opposed to coming closer, they isolate. And so I'm clear about that.
Wow, that's 4,000 members.
Yes.
Wow. How is, and I know you probably deal majority, and I don't want to make a presumption, are most of the fathers you deal with Black fathers?
Yes. I've got NBA fathers, NFL fathers. The lion's share over the last number of years have been minority fathers, though.
How is fathering for them different than when you had your initial years of fathering?
Today, it's getting better. It's still not there yet, but there's a lot more appreciation for dads. Like, I'll give an example. My oldest is 14. I would go into the women's restroom to change them when they were little. Today, there are changing stations in the men's restroom. In the men's restroom. When you think about public Facebook pages, we're not the only. There's several others. I have a mentor of mine. He started a group called Black Fathers. He's got 60,000 fathers in his Facebook group. 60,000 fathers. And in these groups, you find the permission is the word I'm thinking about, given to guys to share what hurts. When I started, that might have been the case. When our fathers, your father, my father started, there was no room for him to go into and say, I'm tired. There was no space for him to say, I'm feeling a little bit sick. I may take 2 days off. That wasn't there. So today there's a little bit more appreciation when dads are actively involved. And that's a benefit of social media. I think we do what we see. And when you start seeing Steph Curry and LeBron James with their kids, it gives guys a model of what they can do.
Oh, what are you feeling of the state of boys at this time?
It's a lot going on, man. It's a lot going on. From the way that they're being encouraged to dress, and I'm not a judge, so when I have guys come into my class or programs I'm doing, I know the quickest way to get rid of his attention is to talk bad about his appearance. Again, you can't correct me until you connect it to me. The quickest way to disconnect is to say those pants are too tight or turn your hat around or pull your pants up. But they're being influenced by so many things that you and I didn't deal with. My influences were in my immediate circle. Today, these young boys growing in good families, good influences, can turn on their phone or tablet and they can get influenced by somebody who they will never meet in a whole nother way. They're in dire need. They're in dire need of an ear. I won't even say an influence. That's there, obviously, but an ear. I think they also need permission to be who they want to be. And when I say that, meaning you don't have to be an actor, a rapper, an athlete. You know, if you can draw as a kid, which I could draw I can draw now. Nobody encouraged that. Nobody encouraged that. So they need a little bit more of that, I think.
This is a really, really important and interesting conversation at this time. And I guess we'll go even to another conversation place, fathers and racism at this time.
Is it there you're asking, or what am I thinking about?
What are your thoughts? Because I know that it's something that you have thoughts about, and I'd love you to share about it with our audience.
I think for the average Black man, these last few days have been painful. I mean, we've been here before, but these last couple of days have been painful. I've been on the phone with guys crying, guys who I've never seen cry like that. I was on a podcast 2 weeks ago at the beginning of everything with George Floyd, and the host of the show, as we were talking, he cut the show. We were talking.
Wow.
It became that emotional. He cut the show. He said, I gotta go. And he cut the show. So Black men today, I think, are under immense emotional stress. Might not verbalize it, may not demonstrate it, but racism exists. 45 years old. I work with white colleagues. In the last couple of weeks, I've done a couple things that most of them may have been surprised about, was just really kind of share with them. I use grace, as I said, but just in an educational way, that every day of my life, I have an encounter where I feel like I'm being judged and race is a factor. Not some days, not the weekends, not when I have on my hoodie or when I have on a suit. It happens every day, Dr. Vibe. Every day. And so you're seeing some of that play itself out. I'm a believer that grace and prayer are important, but I think you also got to, as my dad would say, govern yourselves accordingly. So when I go into a space as a dad with my kids and I feel like there is a threat or danger, simply because I'm Black or we're Black, I remove myself. I'll say this last thing. On one of my podcasts recently, not mine, I was a commenter, all Black men, and a couple of guys said every Black man should have a gun. And it was a challenge. It was like, you know, you're not one of us if you, I said, at 17, I was chased by a man with a pistol and I heard every bullet pass my ears. Probably not the popular thing to say, but I don't have a gun. I don't like guns. I will never own a gun. If something happens in my house, I'm going to have to use these two things right here to protect my family. But I think at this time and place, people are placing their values on others. And if you don't possess those values, there's this pitting one against the other that happens. And you know that there are no winners in that scenario. But Black men as fathers and racism, I don't know when it's going to stop. We'll be here as long as we're here.
Wow.
What do you think?
It's you know what? It's taken so long to get to this situation. It's going to take a long time to get out of it. And I think one of the concerns I have, though, is all these organizations all of a sudden donating dollars to racism and all that. That's nice, but I need we need economic sustainability. We need our black men to have jobs. We need not only jobs, but we need our black men to be entrepreneurs. We need programs for them to be able to be entrepreneurs, because I may get a pushback on this, but white guilt can't help black power.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
yeah.
You know, that's go ahead.
Go ahead. No, you go.
Just want to shout out Michael Taylor, Coach Michael Taylor. Yeah, I'm with you. I choose not to have a gun either. Coach Michael Taylor, that does great stuff with black men, and been on the Dr. Vibe show a number of times. Oh, Zakaria Iltare. I hope sorry if I butchered your name. It's my head, not my heart. But yeah, so people, if you have questions and comments, please put them in the chat room. Geez, what role, or how important compared to when you were growing up is the family to black fatherhood? Where do you see that on the chart right now? Is it okay? Is it not doing okay? Where do you feel the black family has where's the compass of black family when it comes to black fatherhood right now?
You know, it may be because of my lens. I feel like we're going up. And I think it's determined by kind of where you are and where you see things. But in the worst of situations, I go into prisons all the time too. In the worst of situations, you see men trying. Here's what I learned from my father. With all that we went through together, he did the best he could with what he had. And so there are a group of guys that, and this is where I get flack. You mentioned getting flack earlier. In my years of doing work, and you know this because you work with fathers, there are some men who don't know. They don't know. They don't know. And so where I extend grace, it's kind of my first entree to relationships. They don't know that when your wife says, I'm not feeling well, that whatever you're doing, you should turn your attention to her. They've never seen it. Some of them don't know that when your kids say they want you to come to their game and you got to work, that they don't care what job you have. They've never seen somebody talk to a woman without making a pass at a woman. I've been criticized before because my wife is my business partner. And sometimes what she says goes. And I've seen guys pull me to the side and say, hey, man, are you wearing the pants or what in the situation? They don't know. And so that's one of my first thoughts. When I think about our families, there is a generation of young men who are being exposed to good men. And that is using the mediums that they recognize. So from LeBron James, who regardless of how people pick him on top 5, whatever, the brother is putting out positive examples of what a black man is. Steph Curry, you got your artists, you got your activists. There are real examples that guys can follow. So for me, I think we're on the rise.
How are the challenges different? And I don't know, I may have asked this before, but I really wanted to delve down. How are the challenges for black fathers different now than maybe 10, 15, a generation ago?
Easy question. In this way, there are more permissions given to black men today than before. My father, when he started using, what I didn't know as a kid that I know now was my grandfather. My father's father had just died. So my dad, I never forget, we went to the funeral. My dad was in the line of people who came to say all kinds of things, but mainly what they said to him was, be strong. So imagine losing your father. Imagine losing the guy that you looked up to, and the rest of your life, the next couple of years, you have these emotions that you cannot share. I think we have way more permissions now to cry, to emote. There are more groups that allow men to connect and share their feelings. I think the roles of parents it is not uncommon for me to cook in my house, where years ago that might not have been as widely acceptable for a man to do.
So if I came to your house, what would be the best? What would you cook me?
You know what? I was going to say, if Shirani's watching, she can drop it in there. But my favorite dish to cook is lasagna. My kids and my wife love my lasagna. Love my lasagna. Yeah.
I want to shout out Sophia Jacob from the Ottawa area. Also, a comment here from Michael Taylor. As Black men, we must be willing to understand that being a great father is not genetic. It's a learned behavior. Every Black man can learn to be a great father if he is willing to learn to be one.
Absolutely.
And Sharon saying lasagna in capital letters.
Yes. It's a lifesaver for our family. It's a 3-day deal. It's a 3-day meal. It lasts for 3 days. So my wife is free to roam for 3 days at least, and my kids love it. So it's easy.
Well, hey, at least you're a good cook, right?
Yeah.
Let me ask you the challenges, especially some of our young fathers, because in my journey, I've had to mentor a 17-year-old that has twins.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts about for our young Black fathers at this time?
I think one of the things that really troubles me is there's still a generation of people that think men should only do one thing: provide. If I can do anything for young fathers, particularly young Black fathers, is to give them permission to be parents. When I became a father, I was 31 years old. And what I didn't know was that there's a group of people that don't want to see me in the lives of my kids. So for these guys, I'd like to make sure they have examples, a space to go and a space to grow. We've all made mistakes when we were young. I'm not talking about becoming a father, but in terms of the role of parents, we've all made mistakes along the way. But I think providing them some type of support is tremendously important. Most guys, not all guys, most guys are socialized to internalize, meaning that they don't have permission to ask questions. And what I'd like to see for young guys, when I think about them, is really giving them a safe space to share, whether that be a program, a school, or even the hospitals. I've got horror stories of fathers who've been treated less than in the hospital setting when their kids were born, including myself with my oldest. So I'd love to see them have support, but there's some great examples that are out there too, I would say.
Okay. I just want to get your thought on something. We always say the safe space. I always like to say safe and brave space. Your thoughts?
I think you add that. That's a good addition to that. That's a good addition to that. And the other word that I use when I think about fathers is the word patience. There's a lot of expectation placed on guys based on our age. And I will tell you, you've heard the term old fool before. I've met some older gentlemen who they just don't know. But I think you're right about being brave. When you can get him to understand that he's okay. I think most guys look for 3 things: approval, particularly from other people. Might not say it, but when you say, "Good job, this was a great show, Dr. Vibe," you might not need to hear that, but it matters. I think the other thing is appreciation. In my life, but also my work, what I've learned is that men do more of what's appreciated. So if my wife, who likes my lasagna, says, honey, I'm already going to the store with my list to buy the ingredients for the next time I'm going to make it. Appreciation. And then the last one, I think, is probably in different order, is respect. When men feel respected, and respect is not just saying, it's also in a greeting. It's also in giving them an ear. It's in a handshake. It's in eye contact. If those 3 things are present in my life, you can get a guy to do anything you want him to do. The hard part is, though, the hard part for most people in those brave and safe spaces, particularly those who are leading groups, Lauryn Hill had a song in 1996, and the lyric went, how you gonna win if you ain't right within?
Exactly.
And for a lot of service workers, providers, nurses, doctors, teachers, they also bear their own pain from their fathers. And I think sometimes you don't think or you don't intend to, but it just kind of sprays onto every dad that they encounter. And that to me is the thing that if I think about my greatest opportunity to influence the world, it's really touching helpers, really touching helpers.
You pick on something that's really important, and I want you to delve deeper if you can. That, and a lot of people may not realize it, but the relationship that a father had or has with his father is so important. Could you elaborate on that with us?
I've learned that either you have a great experience or you don't. I haven't met many folks who have this mixed. It's personal for all of us. In my work, when I do trainings or when I go into prisons and I ask guys who are incarcerated, finish this sentence, my father was. And I've been in rooms with 60 guys who were in shackles. And it's like popcorn. You just watch the emotion. I was in New York in a prison. This is probably 2016. And I was doing a group with some young fathers. And I asked a question. We had a gentleman who had to be physically restrained because of the question about his father. They had to have guards come in to physically restrain him because that's how emotional he was because of the mention of his father. So you just think about it. It's a personal thing. For many years in my life, I had a hole. I mean, it was, and you know, what I say about the hole is people fill it with all kind of stuff. They fill it with other women. They fill it with drugs. They fill it with substances. They fill it with sports. They fill it with work. For the folks who have not had that great experience with their dads, a lot of us do this. I'm good though. I'm okay. When in all truth, you know, given time, it rears its ugly head at a certain point. But your relationship with your father determines in many ways how you're going to end up. And that's on either end of the spectrum. So I think it's really important.
It's interesting you mentioned that. I'm gonna share a personal story myself, two personal stories. So I'm gonna read what's in the comments.
Yeah.
Sophia Jacob saying, "My father is such a great man. He shared the load with my mother. My mom had to go to work early, and he worked in the evening, so he took on some mornings in getting us off to school. Even did our hair before school. Let me tell you, I had the best ponytail heading out to school, and he still kept the respect of head of the household. I respect him with my whole being." And then Zacharias saying, why are we oppressed? Sorry, because economically we are irrelevant. That's why I encourage our people to shop black to empower entrepreneurs. That the only way tomorrow we will have big business is like those that are in place right now. That way we will buy the politicians, because one of the main mistakes we make as blacks is that we believe that voting can change something. Voting is important, but not when we are voting unorganized like right now. That's my point of view. Respect that point of view. Not another conversation though. And then Michael Taylor saying, healing our father wound is some of the most important emotional work black men must be willing to do. So I will give two personal stories. And I've mentioned this one a few times, but I'm glad that Patrick's here that I can share it. A number of years ago, I had the opportunity to host a conversation called Minding Our Minds. And it was a conversation for Black fathers and mental health. 2 days before the conversation, I only had 3 registrations. The night of the event, 40 fathers showed up. Patrick's a presenter like myself. I had my flip chart ready, all this. And I will say, by the grace of God, I was told to ask this question. I asked the men in the room, how many of you have or had a good relationship with your father? And only 2 hands went up. I put down the flip chart, and that's where we landed for 3 hours. My second personal story in regards to relationship with my father, it wasn't good until about 10 years ago. He had suffered a heart attack. And let me tell you, folks, wheeling my father on a gurney to get a bypass and then waiting for 3.5 hours saying, am I ever going to see this man alive again? I don't want anyone to ever have to go through that. And when the doctor came out, I'm waiting there, 1 or 2 other relatives, and the first thing he said is that he's going to be okay. And I physically got down on my knees and hugged the doctor's leg. Now, here's the funny part. So I asked the doctor, can I go see him? The surgeon, he says, yeah, go ahead. So when I go in there, what does my dad say the first thing? I can feel my toes now. So those are the things about the father. Is very, so just adding on with what Patrick shared, because I don't a lot of times want to get my personal journey in, but I think it's important because the audience wants that transparency and honesty. So I hope, Patrick, those little side stories were of value in your opinion.
Absolutely. My father, I would just say this, one of the things that changed who I am today, and you asked about me being a father some time ago, I'm 45, at about 33, 34, my dad was kind of in and out of sobriety. He was on the streets, but there would be parts of the year that he would stop drinking. And I'll never forget, we went to a park and my dad offered me a cigar. And in my family, for the men, that's like sitting at the big table with the grown-ups. And I had a chance to ask him, like, what happened? That's when I found out about his father. And my dad told me stories about his father taking a pillowcase, putting it over he and his brother's heads while they're naked and beating them as kids. So you think about the trauma of that experience. He told me stories about, as a kid, going out to the university campus to pick up cans when you can get 5 cents for a can or a bottle. And on a college campus where you're older than the students and you're being called racial epithets, and how you just kind of swallow those things. He talked about going downtown to shop with his own money and people telling him, get out of here. And so after years of kind of, I've heard the phrase garbage in, garbage out, being thrown garbage. When he had his break, you got to think about the Coke bottle that's been shaken for 35 years. When you twist that cap, it's going to explode. And so, but he said 2 words to me that shifted my life. My father said to me, he said, I'm sorry. He said, I did the best I could. And when I heard him unpack, we now say trauma, but I would just say unpack his story. All I can do, even after years in my 20s of wanting to fight this man, I never would, but just having that kind of emotion, all I can do is hug him. And it was life-changing for me. Life-changing, because it allowed me to digest these words. Every man has a story. Every man has, when you see the homeless guy asking for money, trust me, he has a story. When you see the guy who is got multiple moms pregnant, kids, he has a story. When you see the guy who's young, who's incarcerated, when you see that mugshot, he has a story. And what I understand, I try to understand, it's not right from wrong, but just kind of how did he get here? But that impacted me in a special way. The last 15 or so years, knowing my dad's story has changed my story. It's changed my story. He's the reason why I've been able to do what I've done in the field. And I've thanked him. I publicly and privately said to him, without our story, it's our story. I wouldn't be who I am. Wouldn't be who I am. I wouldn't have done the stuff that I've done. I want to be in the NFL. I wouldn't have been able to do this work without my father's story. And it's changed everything that I've done. And so if I had to stop and think about why I'm on this show today, you know, why I have the wife that I have, the life that I have, the kids that I have, I give thanks to my dad. Forgiveness is a word that is in the middle of all that I'm saying. And I say it back to him. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. And those are words when somebody said healing. When I think about the weight that I was carrying, the years that I thought I was good. You know how guys say I'm good? I'm good. When I think about the years that I carried the I'm good weight, and when we exchanged those words, again, the wings that my wife gave me in high school, he gave me permission to go on and my dad said things to me like, I'm so freaking proud of you. When he was in facilities for his health or not feeling well, articles that I thought I kept from my high school sports days, my father had kept all of the articles, the little articles, the big articles, all of that stuff he had kept. So forgiveness.
Wow. I think on that last comment, we're going to call it the end of an epic conversation. Patrick, thank you so much for the man and father you have been, you are, and you will be. Before we let you go, any final words and any projects that we should know about that you're involved in that we can either know about or support in any way?
Thank you, Dr. Bob, for the opportunity to be on. I don't take these moments lightly because I don't know who's listening or who's watching, but it's impactful when brothers can connect on this level. The second thing is just really, if there's a brother in your circle that you have not spoken to or you've not shared appreciations with, please give the brother his flowers. A simple word can change somebody's year. It can change somebody's year. So if you got a family member who's doing his best, you haven't said it to him yet. You got a husband or a sibling or a colleague who is doing their best and you just haven't had a chance to tell them that you see them or appreciate them, please extend the appreciation. And my last word is just the word that we ended on, Dr. Bob, is forgiveness. If there is somebody who you haven't spoken to for whatever reason, for whatever period of time, here is the time. This is the time to say, I'm sorry. You don't have to be second. You can be first. Extend that, not for them, not for them. Do it for yourself.
Patrick, if people want to find out more about you or get in contact with you, where can they go?
You can find our organizational website is globalpartnersff.com, globalpartnersff.com. And on Twitter and also Instagram is Patrick Pat with 1T 803, Patrick Pat 803.
Wonderful. What a great conversation. I knew it was, but you blew it off, man. You did it out of the park. I am humbled to be at least in your digital presence, and one day, especially after COVID finishes, I'd love to be in your physical presence. I want to say that one of the things I always say, especially when I'm in a group of ladies, that there are many men out there that are screaming and nothing's coming out. And we have to do what we can to let them scream. And sometimes they have to scream. We have to accept people where they're at, especially men. And one last thing, I always challenge men, fathers, whatever. try your best to have 2 or 3 other men that know everything good about you and everything bad about you. Where I come from, we call them ride or die guys. You need your ride or die guys. You need them. And I'll speak to my dad again. My dad has at least 4 or 5 gentlemen that he has known for over 60, more than 60, 70 years. And they stay in touch with each other almost every day. When we celebrated his 80th birthday a few years ago, and I saw that struck me. And I said, wow, could I get 3 brothers at a table with me that have known me even more than 5 years? As one of my friends, Omni Moore, says, just a thought. Before we call it an evening, I'd like to say thank you to Dr. Tachi, Coach Michael Taylor, Zakaria, Sophia Jacob, Ms. Sharani Patterson. Thank you for taking care of this. And I know my brother Patrick is in good hands. He has been since high school. I also want to shout out Kevin Messam and everyone else who watches live on the replay. If I did not mention your name, it's my head, not my heart. I am Dr. Vibe, host and producer of the award-winning Dr. Vibe show, the home of Epic Conversations. I'm the host of Epic Conversations, 2018 award winner in the innovation category given out by the Canadian Ethnic Media Association. And also one of the many things I do online is I host and co-produce monthly online conversations for fathers that are co-sponsored by Dad Central, Canada's National Fatherhood Organization, and Dove Men Care. When will you catch Dr. Vibe next online? We're broadcasting live on June 11th. And this coming Sunday, June 14th, I'm going to be hosting a national broadcast for Black Canadians. And the title of the conversation is, Are You Listening? And it's basically a little bit of it's going to be a cross-Canada conversation for Black Canadians to voice their concerns, opinions, plus minuses about, do they like what the government is doing for Black Canadians, or they're not happy? So please check that out. Wherever you're watching it, this live, same place, Sunday afternoon, 5 p.m. We're going to have special guests and other things coming on. And also do note that this is part of a series of conversations called Black Men Talking, subtitled A Digital Journey of the Lives of Black Men. So thank you so much. The way I like to end off my conversations, live your life as a dream. If you can dream it, you can make it. Sometimes you have to get smaller to get stronger. Sometimes you have to get small to get stronger. Block assumptions and aim bigger, aim better, aim higher, aim wider. And one last thing, if you're able, remember, if you haven't heard of the name Robert F. Smith, you should look that up. One of the richest Black American men alive today. And recently he said, don't waste this crisis. If you're in the right space mentally and emotionally, don't waste that. Don't waste the crisis. And if you know someone that's in crisis, invest in the people who are not prepared to handle this crisis. God bless. Peace be well. Keep the faith. Walk good. And one last thing, I'd like to thank BIA Media for making this an epic production. Walk good, everybody. Good night.